When your children stop respecting you and you feel completely ignored, it can be one of the most painful and disheartening experiences. You might be tempted to react with anger, frustration, or even withdraw from the relationship altogether. But while these responses might offer short-term relief, they often make the situation worse. There is, however, another way, a more effective and compassionate approach. In this video, we'll explore 8 powerful lessons that can help you stay calm and regain the respect you deserve. These lessons aren't just about reacting to the disrespect, but about approaching the situation with understanding, patience, and empathy. Whether it's a temporary phase or a deeper issue, these strategies can help heal the relationship and foster better communication and respect between you and your children. Lesson 1. Understand their perspective. When children begin to act distant or seem disrespectful, it's easy to jump to conclusions. We might assume that they're being selfish, ungrateful, or simply too busy with their own lives to care about us. However, the truth is, there are often deeper reasons behind their behavior. Reasons that have little to do with how much they love or respect us. Stress, life changes, and even generational differences can all play a role in how they interact with us. It's essential to take a step back and try to see things from their perspective. Take, for example, Margaret, an elderly woman who once felt her children were ignoring her. She noticed that they were less affectionate, not calling as often, and avoiding family gatherings. Initially, this hurt her, and she became frustrated, thinking that her children were simply too busy or indifferent toward her needs. However, after a long conversation with a friend, Margaret realized that her children were dealing with their own struggles, career pressures, financial worries, and the demands of raising their own families. They weren't ignoring her out of malice, but because they were overwhelmed with their own challenges. Sometimes, we forget that the world around our children is constantly changing. With these changes come new priorities and stressors. A young adult, for example, who is trying to balance work, raising children, and keeping up with the demands of life, may find it difficult to find time for their parents. This doesn't mean they love us any less. It simply means they are navigating their own personal struggles. Understanding this can soften the pain we feel and allow us to react with more empathy rather than resentment. Margaret's breakthrough came when she took the time to see her children's emotional distance, not as a reflection of their feelings toward her, but as a result of their own challenges. She shifted her approach from demanding their time to offering support. Her children, realizing that she understood their struggles, began to open up more. They no longer felt like their relationship with their mother was just another thing they had to juggle. The next time you feel like your children are being disrespectful or distant, try to take a step back and consider what might be happening in their lives. Are they under stress? Is there something they're going through that you might not be aware of? By approaching the situation with compassion and a genuine desire to understand, not only will you ease your own heart, but you'll also strengthen the bond between you and your children. Lesson 2. Don't take it personally. When your children seem distant or disrespectful, it's only natural to feel hurt and upset. First instinct often leads us to think, if they're acting this way, it must be because I did something wrong. But one of the most important lessons in these situations is learning to separate their behavior from your sense of self-worth. Your children's actions are not a reflection of who you are as a person or a parent. Often, their behavior is more about their own struggles and emotions than anything you've done. Take the story of Tom, an elderly man who was deeply offended when his daughter started avoiding his calls and visits. At first, Tom was convinced that he had done something wrong. Maybe he said something that upset her. He replayed every conversation, searching for signs of what he might have done to make her distant. The more he thought about it, the more hurt he became, until he felt entirely rejected. What Tom didn't realize was that he had made the mistake of internalizing his daughter's behavior. He assumed it was all about him. But then, one day, he had a conversation with her, and he discovered that her avoidance had nothing to do with him personally. She had been overwhelmed at work, dealing with relationship problems, and struggling to manage her own stress. She hadn't been avoiding him to punish him. She was simply trying to handle her own challenges. This conversation was an eye-opener for Tom. It helped him realize that his daughter's actions were not a reflection of his value or his relationship with her. The turning point for Tom came when he understood that, while he might have been hurt by her actions, they didn't define him as a person. He wasn't a bad father because his daughter was going through a tough time. Her struggles weren't his fault, and they didn't diminish his worth as a parent or as an individual. This realization allowed Tom to stop feeling personally attacked and approach the situation with more patience and understanding. If you're finding yourself in a similar situation, remember that your children's actions are not a direct reflection of your value or worth. While it's painful to feel rejected or ignored, their struggles may be the real cause of their behavior. When you stop taking it personally, you'll be able to approach your relationship with a clearer mind and more compassion. This allows you to rebuild respect without the weight of unnecessary guilt or anger. Lesson 3. Practice patience and empathy. When children seem distant or disconnected, it's easy to feel the urge to rush in and fix things. You might want to demand respect or force a deeper connection right away. But the truth is, sometimes what they need most from us is patience. Just like us, they are navigating their own challenges and going through periods of growth that we may not fully understand. Their journey is different from ours, and sometimes they need the space and time to process their emotions or find their way. Take the story of Harold, an elderly man who often reminisced about his relationship with his own parents when he was younger. Harold was sometimes distant from his mother and father, especially during his teenage years. There were times when he felt misunderstood, frustrated, and disconnected. But as he matured, Harold began to realize that his parents had never forced him to open up or demand his affection. Instead, they gave him the space he needed, quietly showing patience and empathy, even when he wasn't able to express his emotions. Their calm presence and understanding helped him feel safe, and eventually he came around. Over time, Harold came to appreciate how his parents' patience allowed him to develop into the person he is today. They had trusted that he would eventually find his way back to them when he was ready. Harold's story serves as a powerful reminder that sometimes giving your children the space to grow is the most loving thing you can do. It's easy to feel rejected or frustrated when they seem distant, but approaching the situation with patience and empathy can help you better understand their journey. They may not be ready to engage or express their feelings, but that doesn't mean they don't care about you. Like Harold's parents, you can offer the quiet understanding that your child may need to grow at their own pace. Patience is a gift. By showing patience, you not only allow your child to navigate their personal struggles, but you also set the foundation for a deeper connection in the future. It's important to remember that these phases are temporary. While you may feel ignored or rejected now, your child will eventually come to appreciate your calm, steady presence. When you are patient, your child knows they have a safe space to return to when they're ready. So the next time you find yourself upset by your child's distance, remember Harold's story and the impact of patient, empathetic love. Trust that your patience will bear fruit, and one day your child will look back and appreciate the space you gave them to grow. You don't need to rush or force the connection. Just let them know you're there when they're ready. Lesson 4. Communicate calmly, not aggressively. When faced with feelings of disrespect, it's easy to react emotionally and say things in the heat of the moment that you might later regret. However, in order to resolve any conflict with your children, calm and open communication is key. Instead of raising your voice or accusing them, try to express how you feel in a way that invites dialogue and fosters understanding. The goal is not to escalate the situation, but to create a space where both sides can share their perspectives without fear of judgment or anger. Take the story of Edith, an elderly woman who had been feeling increasingly ignored by her son. One evening, after several weeks of feeling shut out, Edith sat down with him in the living room. Rather than confronting him with accusations or demands, she simply said, "I've been feeling a bit distant from you lately, and it hurts. Can we talk about what's been going on?" Her tone was gentle, and she made it clear that her goal was to understand, not to blame. This calm approach opened the door for her son to share his own struggles. He had been going through a tough time at work and was feeling overwhelmed, which had led him to withdraw from the family. Edith's choice to communicate calmly allowed her son to feel safe in opening up. He didn't feel attacked or defensive, and was able to explain his behavior without the fear of being criticized. The conversation not only helped them address the underlying issue, but also strengthened their bond. Edith had created an environment where both of them could share their feelings openly, without the conversation becoming a battle. This approach works because when we communicate with kindness and calmness, it invites the other person to do the same. Aggressive communication, on the other hand, often leads to defensiveness and a breakdown in understanding. If you want your children to listen and respond with empathy, you must first model that behavior yourself. Calmly expressing how you feel without blame or anger sets the stage for a healthier, more constructive conversation. So when you find yourself upset by your child's behavior, take a deep breath and resist the urge to react aggressively. Instead, approach them with a calm heart and a desire to understand. You'll be amazed at how much more effective communication can be when it's rooted in empathy and patience, rather than frustration or anger. By communicating calmly, you create the opportunity for both of you to heal and grow together. Lesson 5. Set boundaries without being overbearing. Setting boundaries is an essential part of any healthy relationship, including the one with your children. However, there's a fine line between setting boundaries that protect your well-being and coming across as confrontational or demanding. It's important to communicate your needs without dictating how things should be. The goal isn't to control the situation, but to establish respect for your personal space and emotional health, while still fostering love and connection. Take the story of Betty, an elderly woman who had always been the one to drop everything and help her children at a moment's notice. Over the years, however, she started to feel like they were taking her for granted. Her children would call her in the middle of the night for favors, expecting her to drop everything without consideration for her time or rest. Betty realized she needed to set some boundaries but didn't want to risk sounding harsh or unloving. One day, Betty calmly told her children, "I love you all very much and I want to help when I can, but I need you to understand that I also need time for myself. I can't always be available, especially at night." She said this in a gentle, understanding tone, making it clear that her boundaries were for her well-being, not as a punishment for them. Betty didn't demand that they follow her rules, but simply communicated her limits. She let them know that while she was always there for them, there were moments when she needed to prioritize her own needs too. By setting boundaries in this way, Betty was able to maintain her relationship with her children while also safeguarding her own peace. She didn't try to control their actions, nor did she make them feel guilty for needing help. Instead, she framed it as a way to preserve the loving relationship they had, ensuring that her needs were respected without damaging their bond. This approach allowed Betty to maintain a sense of independence and self-respect, while still offering her love and support when she could. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you have to be rigid or unyielding. It's about finding the balance between caring for yourself and caring for others. By approaching the situation with kindness and understanding, you can create healthy boundaries without being overbearing. When you set your limits with love and respect, your children are more likely to appreciate your needs and respond in a way that strengthens the relationship. It's all about creating a space where both you and your children can thrive. Lesson 6. Lead by example. One of the most powerful ways to encourage respect in any relationship is by leading through example. It's easy to expect your children to show you respect, but it's equally important to show them how respect is truly given. When you lead with kindness, patience, and love, you teach your children not only how to respect you, but how to foster healthy, respectful relationships with others as well. This approach creates a lasting impact because respect isn't something that can be demanded. It's something that must be nurtured and demonstrated consistently. Consider the story of Alice, an elderly woman who had always faced challenges with her son, Jim. Jim had been distant and somewhat disrespectful, particularly when he was going through tough personal struggles. Instead of reprimanding him or confronting him about his behavior, Alice decided to lead by example. She continued to show him love and respect, even during times when he wasn't reciprocating it. For example, when Jim would make harsh comments or act out of frustration, Alice would remain calm and gentle, responding with understanding instead of anger. She never lowered herself to his level. Instead, she modeled the behavior she wanted to see in him. One day, after Alice had spent hours caring for Jim when he was ill, he surprised her by thanking her with a sincere apology. He admitted that he had been struggling with his own emotions and hadn't recognized how much his actions were affecting her. Jim explained that seeing his mother's unwavering patience and respect for him, despite his behavior, had made him realize how important it was to treat others with the same kindness. Alice's consistent example of respect had planted a seed in Jim's heart, and over time he began to reflect that same respect toward her and others. This story illustrates how leading by example can have a profound impact on your relationship with your children. Rather than demanding respect or confronting your child with anger, you can show them what respect looks like through your own actions. When your children see you handling difficult situations with grace and compassion, it sets a powerful example that encourages them to do the same. In the end, respect isn't something that can be forced. It's something that grows naturally when it's given freely. By showing your children how respect is done, you create an environment where love and mutual understanding thrive. Your example will speak volumes, and over time, your child will come to understand the importance of showing respect, not because they're told to, but because they've witnessed it in you. Lesson 7. Understand it might be temporary. It's easy to get discouraged when your children seem distant or disrespectful, but it's important to remember that these phases can be temporary. Just as life has its ups and downs, relationships go through their own natural ebbs and flows. What you're experiencing right now may not be permanent, and with time, patience, and understanding, the disconnect can heal. Sometimes children go through difficult phases in their lives that cause them to pull away or behave in ways that feel hurtful. But this doesn't mean the love and respect between you is gone for good. Consider the story of George, an elderly man who had seen many ups and downs in his life, including with his children. There were times when he felt incredibly close to his daughter, Sarah, and they shared everything with one another. But there were also times, particularly during Sarah's turbulent teenage years, when she seemed completely distant. She would argue with him, shut him out, and at times act as though she didn't care about him at all. George naturally felt hurt and confused. However, rather than making assumptions or feeling rejected forever, he held on to the belief that this was just a phase, something temporary. As the years passed, Sarah grew older and began to reflect on her past behaviors. Eventually, she returned to George, apologizing for her actions during that difficult time and expressing gratitude for his patience and love. Looking back, she realized how much her father had always been there for her, even during the times when she was at her most distant. George's patience and understanding had created a safe space for Sarah to return to when she was ready. His belief that the disconnect was temporary allowed him to maintain his composure and hope, even during those difficult years. This story shows that phases of disconnection, while painful, are often just a small part of the larger picture of a relationship. The ups and downs are natural, and sometimes the best thing you can do is wait it out without reacting impulsively. Relationships, like everything else in life, evolve. Just because your child seems distant or disrespectful now doesn't mean it will last forever. Your relationship can grow and change. And with patience, love, and understanding, you can work through these phases. So if you're feeling discouraged, take a step back and remember George's story. It's natural to feel hurt when things aren't going well, but understand that this could be just a temporary phase in a long and meaningful relationship. With time, things can change, shift, and your bond with your child can become even stronger than before. Resilience in relationships is key, and by holding on to the belief that this too shall pass, you can navigate through difficult periods with grace and hope. Lesson 8. Take care of your own happiness. One of the most important things you can do for both yourself and your relationship with your children is to take care of your own happiness. It's easy to get caught up in the emotional roller coaster of family dynamics, especially when things feel strained. However, if you neglect your own well-being, you risk becoming overly dependent on your children for emotional fulfillment, which can create tension and distance. By focusing on your own happiness, pursuing hobbies, engaging in social activities, and maintaining your independence, you not only improve your own quality of life, but also indirectly strengthen your relationship with your children. Take the story of Helen, an elderly woman who had always put her family first. For years, she had dedicated herself to her children's needs, making sacrifices without thinking twice. But as time passed, she began to feel isolated and overwhelmed. Her children, busy with their own lives, couldn't always provide the emotional support she needed. At first, Helen felt hurt and resentful, but she soon realized that if she wanted to be happy, she had to take charge of her own well-being. Helen started by reconnecting with old friends, joining a local book club, and taking up gardening, a passion she had long neglected. As she filled her life with activities that brought her joy and fulfillment, she noticed a positive shift in her energy. She was no longer relying on her children to make her happy. Instead, she had created a rich, vibrant life for herself. This newfound happiness didn't go unnoticed. Her children, seeing her more engaged and content, started to feel more comfortable reaching out to her. They appreciated the fact that she had a fulfilling life of her own, and this respect led to a deeper, more balanced connection. By prioritizing her own happiness, Helen found that her relationship with her children improved organically. She wasn't seeking constant validation or attention from them, and that sense of independence made her interactions with them more peaceful and enjoyable. She learned that when you focus on your own happiness and well-being, you stop expecting your children to fill that void. As a result, the pressure on the relationship eases. So if you're feeling disrespected or ignored, remember that your happiness is in your hands. Pursue your hobbies, foster meaningful friendships, and take care of yourself. The more you invest in your own happiness, the more you'll bring positive energy into your relationship with your children. Your joy will become contagious, and instead of relying on them for emotional support, you'll find that your interactions with them are more harmonious, fulfilling, and mutually respectful. Taking care of your own happiness is not only good for you, it's good for your family too. Remember, when your children seem distant or disrespectful, it's important to stay calm, patient, and focused on building a relationship based on understanding and respect. By following these 8 lessons, you can foster a deeper, more meaningful connection that will stand the test of time. Thank you so much for watching. If you found these tips helpful, let me know in the comments. If you agree with the lessons, just type 9 if you do, or 0 if you think we missed anything. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.